Hi there, I'm Don.
And hi, I'm Cindy. Welcome to Pearls of Liberty, April 6th, 2013. There are some interesting things that are going on. One is New Hampshire Legislature reveals U.S. federal government is a corporation operating with a fraudulent constitution. Can you imagine that?
How about that? Yeah, it's a fraud. It's a fraud. Yeah, the government is not really the government, it's a corporation. So it's actually, people, that's starting to get traction. People in the Patriot Movement have been saying this for years, and it's now finally into the New Hampshire Legislature. The Live Free or Die state has finally discovered it, and they are moving forward. It's exciting.
Yeah, some great potential there for people to figure out what's going on. And what they're trying to do is reinstate the 13th Amendment, which states that if you hold any kind of royal title, you may not hold public office. And the royal title includes the title of Esquire, which all attorneys carry.
Right, and the whole point is that the legal system was designed to entrap people into the British mechanism of control, and it has indeed done that. That was seen early on. That was the real cause of the War of 1812, and that's why in Britain they think that we won our independence in 1812 because we won that war, when the real goal of that war was to destroy evidence of the original 13th Amendment, which is that you can't have any titles of nobility and hold office. So here we are, and it's now in the mainstream.
Pretty good. 200 and some years later,
Yeah,
we're still struggling with it. The new renaissance, how Bitcoin millionaires will change the world. What do you think about that?
I'm just wondering where, how people are going to get payment with Bitcoin and how that's going to work, because I don't know that you can buy a whole lot with Bitcoin now. I guess that's changing, but I think it's just an exciting new thing happening, but I think people are struggling to figure out how to learn how to accept Bitcoins.
Yeah, because it all needs to be through the computer. I had read a couple weeks ago that the first Bitcoin ATM is scheduled to be installed in, of all places, Cyprus.
Yeah, very interesting. That would explain why Cyprus got hit with this bankster attack. So, yeah, this is a serious confrontation of the old monetary system with the new, the wave of the future. We talked about Bitcoin as soon as we heard about it, which was over a year ago now, probably 2 years or something. But it's now starting to move forward, and yeah, it'll be exciting.
This was kind of an interesting week in the markets, with the Dow pushing up higher, and then yesterday there was a bit of a drop off. The market recovered to some extent, but from April 2nd, this commentator said exit signals. FedEx is sending a signal to exit the markets, and some other indicators here that led to a quote. Mark Faber, be prepared to lose 20 to 30%. I think you're lucky if you don't lose your life. That's a pretty strong statement.
Yeah, Faber's bullish. I mean, bearish. Bullish. He's bearish and has been for a long time. And these are technical indicators that look like there's a drop headed. But whether or not it really happens remains to be seen. And I think the fundamentals are just extremely poor. So I wouldn't necessarily know that the technicals have rolled over yet, but they could.
And some more charts about this week's stock market change on Friday. How today's non-farm payroll release looked to an algorithm. So evidently what happened yesterday was that unemployment numbers were released, and made quite an impact on the market.
Unemployment was higher than was forecast, and so that made a significant impact. And yeah, it's no news for people that have been paying attention that there just aren't any jobs, and that this is all a phony economy, and any recovery is just based on fraudulent numbers. So at some point, the illusion begins to crumble, and that appears to be happening.
DEA accused of leaking misleading info, falsely implying that it can't read Apple iMessages. And earlier this week, there were news articles that stated that iMessage, because it's encrypted, could not be read. Evidently, that was only through the service provider. Now, this article states that even though iMessage is encrypted, all of the messages are on a server at Apple and remain there for some time, and that iMessage is really not a safe means of communication. It can be spied on.
I think as far as encryption goes, you have to think about it in two stages. There's the stage where it's traveling over the internet, and there's the stage where the data is living on servers. And those are two very different things. So if we're saying that this is encrypted as it travels, well, that's a good thing. That's like your secure banking information that travels over secure HTTP. Yes. So I wouldn't necessarily say this story is debunking the previous story. It's just qualifying it. And I think that we all need to learn a little bit more about how encryption works and understand that if you want true end-to-end encryption where it can't be read on servers, you're going to have both a private key and a public key, and that's how all encryption algorithms work. So unless you've got that, you don't have end-to-end encryption. But as long as you trust the people that have the servers, like for instance banks, if you trust banks, etc., then to not reveal your information, then that's good. The dangers of the internet have always been all of the transmissions that are going on that can be spied on with sniffers, etc. And if the information that's being transmitted is encrypted during the transmission, then that is going to cover you most of the time. Again, it's just about trusting the other end that you're communicating the data to.
There's some interesting news that has surfaced this week pertaining to DNA and how it relates to other matter. And this article states that it can be reprogrammed by words and frequencies, which is, I find, really interesting. And just a note about frequencies: different essential oils have different frequencies according to the book Healing is Voltage. And so there are many, many aspects of healing and restoration that are completely outside of conventional medicine.
Oh, that means they're fakes. That means they're quacks, right?
They're charlatans. They're charlatans.
Yeah. They haven't been approved by the AMA, so
they're
not real. They don't
approval.
exist. Yeah. But our great medical system would never allow anything that was fraudulent to enter in. So that's why we don't know about this.
So yeah, if DNA can be reprogrammed by words and frequencies, I'm guessing the words are probably positive words, and the frequencies are frequencies that we would associate with such things as love and what they call the higher emotions that bring about health and just general improvement in circumstances. And of course the lower frequency emotions have the opposite effect.
Yeah, and of course this relates back to that information we passed on several months ago that had to do with the Nazi tuning of the whole musical scale, right? That was a discordant frequency that was tuning the human race towards war and destruction. And that is still the musical scale standard, unless you want to tune your instruments differently, which some artists have done.
Well, and EMFs, of course, are electromagnetic frequencies. So what they're beaming with smart meters and HARP and any number of other, even cell towers, can have an impact on our DNA.
Yeah, and those frequencies that were chosen for those transmissions were purposely chosen to they were chosen in order to disrupt DNA. They were chosen as not to be neutral, but to be anti-human.
So I suppose in many respects we're trapped, but of course there's a lot that we can do. We can wrap our smart meter, we can get rid of our smart meter, we can limit cell phone use, we can run our internet connections through the electrical system in our walls as opposed to beaming it out through Wi-Fi. And I suppose we can just take a day or two a week where we try to get somewhere where there are not a whole lot of EMFs. We might have to drive a bit.
Well, and there's also a lot of really good EMF protection devices available. There's a whole bunch of things, and they really do work. They really do protect you.
Great. And in tandem with that information, emotions, DNA, and the divine matrix. The issue here is that DNA, we just read that DNA is influenced by frequencies and words. DNA in turn influences matter. And the first experiment that is mentioned here, the DNA was placed with some matter, and the matter took shape. A pattern developed, and when the DNA was removed, the particles stayed in exactly the same shape. So there's that aspect of this information, and then there's also the aspect that an experiment was done with people, and some of their cells were removed to a remote location, even as far as 350 miles away. And the people were exposed to emotional stimulus, and the cells, even the cells as far as 350 miles away, responded the same way the person did to the stimulus.
We are omnipresent. This is proof that you are created in the image of God, and that you are beyond time and space. You're outside of time. You're eternal. It's not the physical DNA that has these capabilities, but it's the harmonious relationships and frequencies that God that are in the life that is God-given and that we vibrate with. It's quite remarkable, and DNA is just like the antenna to all of that life force.
The Bible says that in Him all things hold together, and I've wondered whether the word that God spoke at creation that caused things to materialize or manifest out of just basically cosmic soup are the same things that's that voice of God that is kind of the mystery element that you were referring to, that really is this what is the essence of reality.
Indeed. Yes. Amazing connections.
Well, we will conclude with that, and hope that you take the time to actually read at least these last couple articles about DNA, and consider that, as the Bible says, Selah. Pause and meditate on these things a little bit, and it helps to put things in the rest of the news into perspective when we recognize that we are eternal, and that this God breath in us, this God word in us, really transcends and overcomes any evil, any darkness, any attack. So thanks for joining us.
Right. There is no need to fear the truth. So, because the power that is in God and is in us through Him, it is much greater. So, see the world the way that it really is. See yourself in it. Walk your walk. You are the one that you've been waiting for.